told you to chase it, to want more, to never stop reaching, that your hunger made you worthy, that your desires were divine, that if you just wanted it bad enough, you could have it. But what if that was the trap? What if your craving was the cage? What if needing was the reason you kept waiting? Because the truth is this: you were never supposed to beg life to love you. You were supposed to become so whole, so still, so radiant in your own being that life couldn't help but pour itself into you. Not when you chased, but when you remembered who you are, what you carry, and why the universe has been waiting for you to stop running. You were taught that desire is power, that craving is clarity, that the deeper the hunger, the closer the prize. Want it, visualize it, manifest it. But what if that was the lie? What if the wanting itself was the wall between you and everything you've ever asked for? We are born into a system that teaches us to reach. Before we can walk, we are told to grasp. For toys, for grades, for love. We are trained to believe that satisfaction is outside of us, somewhere just ahead, in the next thing, the next person, the next level, always just out of reach. And so we chase. We fill journals with desires. We speak affirmations not from presence, but from panic. We beg the universe in the language of lack, not knowing that every desperate whisper echoes back into our reality as absence. Because when you want from emptiness, you don't create fulfillment. You amplify the void. That's the secret no one told you. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your frequency, to the quiet signal beneath the script. And if that signal says, "I am not enough unless I get this," then all the universe hears is the declaration of your unworthiness. You become the magnet, not for what you want, but for what you believe you are missing. We've been taught to seek, but not to become, to chase, but not to embody, to desire from distance, instead of realize from alignment. But desire born from lack is not a prayer, it's a program, a loop that keeps you running in circles, believing you are one manifestation away from being whole. You are not, you are already whole. But as long as you need that thing to feel it, you delay its arrival. Because the sacred paradox is this: the moment you no longer need it is the moment you become available to receive it. And until then, you're just walking through mirages, chasing your own shadow, under a sun that was never meant to burn you. The lie was never the wanting. The lie was that you were incomplete without what you wanted. But the truth is that you don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. And when you stop chasing the illusion, you begin to remember the source. The source is not out there. It never was. It's you. It's always been you. Still, silent, whole, waiting for you to stop begging and start becoming. You didn't come into this world chasing. You came in whole, radiant, enough. You breathed, and it was miracle. You cried, and the world responded. You existed, and that was reason enough for the universe to pour itself into you. But then, the programming began, not with malice, not even with awareness, just repetition disguised as love. Be good and you'll be rewarded. Work hard and you'll be worthy. Don't cry, don't rest, don't ask too much. And quietly, something shifted. Your being became behavior. Your light became a ledger. Your joy became conditional. You learned to reach, to perform, to please, because somewhere along the way, they taught you that love must be earned, that validation lives outside of you, that you are not enough. unless you're better, unless you succeed, unless someone else sees you first. And so you started chasing grades, chasing approval, chasing a version of yourself that would finally feel whole. But here's what no one told you. The system was built to keep you running. It rewards the chase. It glorifies the grind. It worships productivity like it's divinity. But the faster you run, the more invisible the finish line becomes, because there isn't one. This is the hidden machinery of modern suffering, a matrix of perpetual striving, where stillness is mistaken for laziness, and silence is feared like death. It doesn't want you to remember your completeness, because the moment you stop chasing, you stop consuming. And when you stop consuming, you start seeing through the masks, through the myths, through the idea that your enoughness could ever come from outside yourself. Spiritual teachers have whispered this for centuries. In Taoism, they call it Wu Wei, effortless action. In Buddhism, it's non-attachment. In Gnostic texts, it's gnosis, inner remembrance beyond dogma. Even Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," not in a paycheck, not in applause, not in another person's approval, within. But the programming was clever. It made the inner path feel like failure, and the outer path look like success. So you kept running, but now something in you is slowing down, not from exhaustion, but from awakening, because the soul doesn't chase. The soul calls, the soul attracts, the soul remembers, and the moment you begin to unlearn the chase, the moment you stop running toward the light and start realizing it's coming from you, that's when the spell begins to break. That's when the real journey begins. The soul doesn't beg, it doesn't plead, it doesn't grasp, it doesn't perform rituals to prove it's worthy. It remembers, in stillness, in silence, in sacred alignment. Manifestation, as you've been taught, has become a performance. Vision boards, mantras, strategies. Raise your vibration. Say it until it's real. Ask until the universe gives in. But this isn't co-creation. It's negotiation. And the soul does not negotiate with the infinite, because the soul already knows. You are not here to get something. You are here to remember you already have it. Not in the form, but in the field. You are not manifesting from lack, unless you believe in the lack. You are manifesting from memory, a memory so deep it predates language. You were whole before you had words for wholeness. You were divine before you were told what divine meant. And deep in your being, you've never forgotten. You've only been distracted. The loudness of life drowns the soul's whisper, but even when buried, it pulses beneath the noise, quietly reminding you, you don't have to ask louder, you have to listen deeper. This is why ancient mystics turned inward, why yogis sat in stillness, why Gnostics spoke of remembering, not believing, because belief changes, belief bends, but knowing, that remains. And when you touch that knowing, when you stand still enough to feel the soul's current flowing underneath the mind's noise, you stop begging, you start aligning, and what once felt far starts moving toward you, not because you demanded it, but because you made space for it. That's the shift. Manifestation isn't about yelling into the void, it's about dissolving the walls that kept it out. The soul doesn't beg for love, it becomes love. The soul doesn't chase peace, it radiates it. The things you seek, they were never outside of you. They are echoes of your true self, mirrored in matter. And when you remember that, when you become still enough to feel it again, life begins to echo that truth back to you. It arrives in the silence, in the trust, in the surrender of the performance. This is what the mystics knew. This is why they stopped asking and started becoming. You don't have to demand from the universe. You are the universe, remembering itself. And when that remembrance anchors in your body, when it roots into your breath, into your presence, everything begins to return. Not because you fought for it, but because you finally remembered it was always yours. There is no out there, only reflection. The external world, the money, the love, the success, the silence, the chaos. It's not the goal. It's the mirror. It doesn't respond to your wishes. It reflects your vibration. Not what you want, but what you are. And this is the law most people never learn. The law of the mirror. That life doesn't speak in language. It speaks in resonance. Your relationships mirror your self-worth. Your delays mirror your distrust. Your breakthroughs mirror your surrender. Not as punishment, as feedback. Everything is responding to your state of being. We are trained to think causally. If I do this, I'll get that. If I fix this problem, the world will give me a reward. But this isn't how the soul's physics works. Your life isn't built from the outside in. It unfolds from the inside out. And until the inner shifts, the outer will repeat itself. Again and again, scene after scene. Different faces, same lesson. Because the mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't judge. It simply reflects. So the real transformation doesn't begin when you change your job, or your partner, or your circumstances. It begins when you stop trying to rearrange the mirror and begin to shift the one standing in front of it. You, when you go still, when you drop into the breath, when you ask not, what's wrong with the world, but what is the world trying to show me about myself? That's where the alchemy begins. You stop reacting, you start witnessing. And witnessing turns reflection into revelation. In the Hermetic teachings, it is said, as above, so below, as within, so without. This isn't just poetry. It's quantum. It's ancient. It's real. Your frequency precedes your form. Your energy precedes your outcomes. If the world around you feels chaotic, start with the world within. Not to blame yourself, but to reclaim your power. Because the mirror isn't here to hurt you. It's here to wake you, to show you what's unhealed, to reveal where your energy still leaks. And the moment you stop blaming the mirror, the moment you start using it as a tool, not a torment, everything changes. Not because life gave you what you wanted, but because you became what life was waiting for. The mirror bends to your becoming. And when your inner world softens, when you begin to radiate peace, stillness, presence, you no longer have to chase beauty. It reflects back to you. The outside world was always just a canvas for your inner light to remember itself. They taught you to want it, to visualize it, to write it down again and again, to say it like a spell until the universe couldn't ignore you. They called it manifestation. But they didn't tell you the most important part, that your desire alone isn't what creates. It's your state of being underneath the desire that shapes your reality. Because when you want from emptiness, you don't pull things closer. You push them further away. Desire rooted in lack creates more lack, not as punishment, but as reflection. The universe doesn't judge, it mirrors. And if what you're holding is, I need this to feel whole, then life keeps giving you reasons. To stay in that need, you become magnetic, but only to absence. Because your energy says, I am not enough yet. I am not whole until I will be complete. when. And so the universe listens, not to your words, but to your frequency. This is what they never taught you, that your manifestation practice is only as powerful as your inner presence is full. Presence isn't about being loud, it's about being aligned. It's the moment you sit down, breathe deep, and remember, I am already connected, I am already worthy, I am already whole. And from that space, desire becomes an offering, not a cry. It's not please give me, it's I am open to receive. This is what the mystics knew, that abundance doesn't arrive through tension, it flows through relaxation. The Tao speaks of Wu Wei, action through non-action, the effortless unfolding of life when you no longer resist it. Rumi wrote, "When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me." This is not metaphor, this is vibration. When you are full on the inside, the outside begins to rearrange itself to match. Because fullness is magnetic, peace is magnetic, presence is magnetic. And when your wanting is no longer desperate, but devotional, when it comes not from I lack, but from I overflow, the universe doesn't hesitate. It moves, not because you screamed louder than before, but because you finally stopped screaming. You started listening, and your energy began to whisper, I'm ready now. Not because I'm broken, but because I've remembered who I am. This is the real manifestation. It's not magic, it's remembrance, it's alignment. It's not about chasing the thing, it's about becoming the space where the thing naturally lands. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the presence of power. But in this world, they made you afraid of stillness, because stillness is not passive. It is not laziness, it is not delay. Stillness is subversive. It interrupts the momentum of illusion. It pauses the program. It creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you remember. You remember that you are not your thoughts, not your cravings, not your hustle. You are the awareness underneath, the calm, the witness, the spark. And that's dangerous to a system built on speed, because when you're constantly moving, you don't question where you're going. You just run and consume and chase. But when you stop, even for a breath, you begin to see. You see that most of your motion was just a distraction from being. And in that moment of stillness, creation begins. Not the kind you were taught in school, not building through effort, but birthing through alignment. All of nature honors this. The seed does not strain. It rests in the soil until the light finds it. The moon does not rush. It waxes and wanes in silence. The stars do not fight to shine. They simply are. Stillness is not stagnation. It is sacred incubation. This is why mystics seek it. Why monks wake before the sun. Not to do, but to be. Why sages sit on mountaintops for decades in quiet. Because they're not escaping the world. They are reprogramming it from the inside out. The real frequency of power doesn't roar. It hums. And when you tune into it, everything begins to shift. Opportunities begin to arrive. Not because you hunted them down, but because you finally stood still long enough for them to find you. This is the wisdom hidden in every tradition. In the Tao Te Ching, those who flow as life flows know they need no other force. In the Psalms, be still and know. In the Vedas, all that is born from action was first held in stillness. Even modern quantum physics echoes this. Particles do not behave until observed. Reality waits for awareness, and stillness is the gateway. To awareness, the most radical thing you can do, in a world addicted to motion, is stop. Not forever, just long enough to remember your center, to breathe, to feel, to come back into rhythm with the deeper current of life. Because the soul doesn't move in straight lines, it spirals, and sometimes stillness is the fastest way forward. Imagine a traveler, worn, sun-beaten and aching, walking across a vast and burning desert, their throat dry, their hope fading, their eyes scanning the horizon for something, anything that looks like water. They've been walking for days, driven by the belief that somewhere ahead lies the oasis, the answer, the healing, the reward. Each step is harder than the last, but they press on because they were told, keep going, don't stop, it's just ahead. But the oasis never comes. It appears in shimmering waves on the sand, then disappears when they arrive. A mirage, again and again, and with every false promise, the traveler begins to unravel. Their faith becomes fatigue, their will becomes exhaustion, and at last, they collapse, not in defeat, but in surrender. They drop to their knees, close their eyes, and release the chase. And something shifts. In the stillness, a breeze. In the silence, a whisper. And when the traveler opens their eyes, they see it, not far away, but near. Not a hallucination, but real. The oasis, cool water, shade, relief. It had been there all along, not ahead, but beside them, invisible, until they stopped chasing. This is not just a story. It is a truth wrapped in metaphor, a map hidden in myth. Because you are the traveler, the desert is your becoming, and the oasis is never out there. It's the peace that arises when you stop running, the clarity that arrives when the mind goes still, the abundance that was always present, but blocked by the pursuit. The more you strain, the more the mirage moves, the more you need, the further it seems, because reality is not found through force, it is revealed through surrender. This is why the mystics let go, why Rumi said, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. Because the treasure is not at the end of the journey. It's in the moment you stop chasing what you think you need and start receiving what was already waiting. The oasis never moved, but the traveler's eyes were too full of thirst to see it. That is the nature of spiritual longing. When we chase it, it flees. When we rest, it appears. So sit beneath your own dune. Let the wind find your skin. Let the silence rise like a tide. And watch as the world begins to flow toward you. Not because you reached for it, but because you became still enough to finally see what was always within reach. In the ancient temples, they lit incense. They chanted mantras. They faced east. They bowed their heads and lifted their hearts, not to ask, but to align. Prayer was not begging. It was focus, a deep offering of presence to something higher and older than the noise of the world. But now, in this digital age, the altar has changed, and the prayer, it's your attention. Where your gaze goes, your energy flows. Not just metaphor, reality. You are a transmitter, a signal, a living field of consciousness, streaming frequency into form, and your attention is the steering wheel of your creation. Every time you scroll without awareness, you offer a prayer. Every time you dwell in fear, you offer a prayer. Every time you obsess over lack, you offer a prayer, not in words, but in vibration. This is what they never told you, that you are always praying, with every thought, with every fixation, with every moment of focused awareness. Prayer is not a ritual, it's a rhythm, and attention is its drumbeat. That's why the world wants it. That's why corporations spend billions to hijack your focus. That's why your phone vibrates. At the precise moment, you begin to settle into stillness, because your attention is sacred currency, and everyone is trying to spend it for you. But here's the truth. No algorithm wants you to know. Your attention is creative, it's magnetic, it's divine. And when you begin to reclaim it, you begin to reclaim your life. The mystics always knew this. The Sufis spun to center themselves in divine focus. The yogis stared into candle flames to still the mind. The Gnostics practiced inner vision, the sacred art of watching the soul, not to escape the world, but to create from within it, because where attention flows, reality follows. If you water your fear, it blooms. If you water your peace, it multiplies. And when you turn your gaze inward, when you sit in stillness and breathe presence into being, you re-enter the temple. Not one built of stone, but of silence. Your body becomes the altar, your breath becomes the incense, and your attention becomes the offering. You don't need to chase answers. You need to bring your gaze home. Home to the now, home to the heart, home to the quiet pulse of life moving through you. Because when your attention becomes sacred again, your life becomes sacred again. And in that space, miracles don't just visit, they stay. There is a moment, quiet, sacred, undeniable. When something shifts, you feel it not in your mind, but in your body, in your breath, in your field. A soft detachment, a gentle release. And in that moment, a silent truth rises. I no longer need, I simply am. This is the crossing, the threshold between craving and creation, between reaching and radiating, between begging and becoming. We've been taught to create from hunger, to build out of scarcity, to believe that desperation fuels manifestation. But desperation only attracts mirrors. Mirrors of more lack, more noise, more evidence that we are still not enough. That's not creation, that's survival. And the soul did not come here to survive. It came to remember its power. Creation doesn't begin when you want harder. It begins when you become still enough to realize you're already connected to everything you're asking for. Because the real creator doesn't operate from lack. The real creator speaks from alignment, not please give me, but this is who I am. This is why ancient teachings whisper, I am that I am. Not a phrase, a frequency, not a command, a remembrance. The universe doesn't respond to words, it responds to being. And when your being says dash dash, I am worthy, I am open, I am whole. Life cannot help but echo that back. You become a tuning fork, a gravitational field. Reality starts to bend toward you, not because you forced it, but because you finally matched its rhythm. The Buddhists call it non-attachment. The Taoists call it wu-wei. The mystics call it surrender. And modern physics calls it coherence. But they all mean the same thing. You don't manifest by holding tighter. You manifest by releasing the grip and stepping into resonance. From I want to I remember. From I lack to I live. From someday to I already am. This is the shift. Not an idea, a vibration, a field that opens the moment you stop proving and start allowing. That's when you move from craving to creation, from desperation to divinity, from being the seeker to being the source. You were never meant to chase what's meant for you. You were meant to embody it, to hold it in your field, until the world rearranged itself around your knowing. Because the greatest truth is this: you don't get what you want, you get what you are. And when I need dissolves into I am, the universe answers. Without delay, without effort, without resistance. Not because you earned it, but because you remembered. It was never missing. The universe doesn't hide out of cruelty. It hides out of reflection, because what you radiate is what reality returns. Not as punishment, not as judgment, but as a mirror. And when we plead, when we beg from fear, from lack, from desperation, life becomes a feedback loop of that very same frequency. We cry, why won't it come? But the real question is, what am I telling life I believe? Fear is not just an emotion, it's a transmission. It informs the field around you. It shapes the subtle architecture of your outcomes. When you approach the universe like a parent, you must convince. When you whisper your desires with clenched fists and gritted teeth, you're not inviting, you're bracing. And what you brace for, you manifest, because the universe responds not to the mask, but to the energy underneath it. That's why begging doesn't work. That's why pleading doesn't open doors. Not because you're unworthy, but because the act of pleading is a declaration of separation. It's the vibration of I'm not enough yet, of I don't have it, of it's not coming. And so, it doesn't. Because the mirror does not give you what you need. It gives you what you are. But silence. Silence speaks a different language. Not the silence of avoidance, but the sacred silence of presence, of knowing, of listening. It's the stillness that says, I am already connected. I don't need to force what's already mine. I am open, and I trust. In that quiet space, miracles begin to move, not because you begged harder, but because you stopped. You stopped vibrating at fear. You stopped reinforcing the absence. You stopped confirming the void, and you began to hold space, real space, the kind that calls things in without chasing them down. The mystics knew this. Jesus retreated to pray in solitude, not to plead, but to align, to reconnect with what was already flowing. In Taoism, it's said, the softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest, because softness is receptive, and receptivity is power. We were not taught this. We were taught noise. Push harder, pray louder, convince the universe to listen. But the universe has always been listening. The question is, what are you telling it with your energy? You don't need to shout your desires into the void. You need to quiet the static long enough to feel what's already echoing back. Because when you stop begging, when you enter silence with trust, not as emptiness, but as readiness, the universe doesn't resist you. It reveals itself to you. And what once hid in the shadows steps forward into the light, not because it changed, but because you did. The modern world tells you to fill yourself, fill your schedule, fill your mind, fill your cart, fill the silence with noise. But ancient wisdom whispers something different, something quieter, something older. If you want to be full, said Lao Tzu, let yourself be empty. A paradox, but one that holds the key to everything you've been searching for. Because fullness doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from spaciousness. An empty cup can be filled. A full cup can only overflow. And when we are overflowing with desire, attachment, fear, control, there is no room left for grace. That's why so many feel stuck. Not because they're broken, but because they're crowded. too full of the stories they were told, too full of the thoughts they didn't question, too full of the pressure to always be more, and so nothing new can enter. Lao Tzu saw this. Thousands of years ago, in a world already grasping for power, he stepped back. He didn't seek more, he sought less. Because in less, there is space. In space, there is presence. And in presence, life moves without resistance. The Tao does nothing, he said, and yet nothing is left undone. This is not passivity. This is alignment. This is the wisdom of the empty cup. When you let go, even just a little, of the idea that you must fill every moment, prove every worth to control every outcome, you create room for breath, room for clarity, room for the universe to step in. It's not about giving up, it's about getting out of the way. The Tao is the flow, the source, the silent order behind all things, and the more you try to grip it, the more it slips through your fingers. But when you become still, when you empty the cup, not just of things, but of expectation, the Tao enters, not with noise, but with knowing, not with answers, but with alignment. You stop needing to fill yourself from the outside, because you begin to realize you are not the cup, you are the space inside it. And space is sacred. Space is possibility. It's invitation. It's trust made tangible. So in a world that urges you to stuff yourself with more goals, more hustle, more noise, become the opposite. Become empty, not as absence, but as presence. Because only when you are empty can the truth finally pour in. There is a pull inside you. Software subtle, but unmistakable. Not the push of ambition, not the pressure of expectation, but something gentler, older, something sacred. Rumi called it the strange pull of what you really love. He said, let yourself be silently drawn by the pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. And he was right, because there is a gravity in the soul, a magnetic center that doesn't scream for attention, but quietly points the way home. We're taught to ignore it, to override it, to follow logic, plans, projections, results. But the soul doesn't speak in charts. It speaks in resonance, in feeling, in the quiet ache that says, there's something more than this. And if you listen, not with your ears, but with your whole being, you begin to feel the difference between forcing and flowing, between chasing what you think you need and allowing yourself to be drawn by what already loves you. This is not a metaphor. It's a movement, a shift from survival patterns to sacred trust, a remembrance that you are not here to conquer life. You are here to dance with it. And love, true love, doesn't need to be hunted. It recognizes itself in you, and it pulls, like the moon pulls the tide, like light pulls the seed upward from the soil, like destiny pulls the soul toward the very thing it came here to become. But only if you allow it. Only if you stop resisting what pulls you in and stop chasing what pushes you away. This is the quiet rebellion of the mystic, to walk not by the map of the mind, but by the compass of the heart, to choose the unseen path, because something within you knows is where the real treasure lives. Rumi didn't follow doctrine, he followed devotion. He didn't teach through rules, he taught through rhythm, through fire, through longing turned inward, until it revealed the beloved. And you have that same spark, that same pull, that same invitation to trust what moves you, without needing to explain why. Because the pull doesn't come with proof, it comes with a whisper and a choice, to lean in or to turn away. But if you do lean in, if you follow the thread of what truly lights your soul, it will not lead you astray. It will lead you home. Lack is not just a feeling, it's a design. It has shape, it has strategy, it has systems, and you are born into them. From your earliest breath, you are wrapped in signals, advertisements, curriculums, stories, all echoing the same frequency. You are not enough yet. Your worth was tied to performance. Your beauty was measured against pixels. Your success was scripted by someone else's metrics. And slowly, without realizing it, you were taught to hunger for validation, for status, for things, for more, always more. And in that hunger, something sacred was buried, the knowing, the quiet remembrance that you were already whole. But that knowing doesn't sell. And so, lack was engineered. Desire became a product. Identity became a brand. Spirituality became a trend. And your longing, it became profitable. Because when you forget who you are, you become easy to sell to, easy to guide, easy to distract. This is the architecture of lack. It isn't accidental. It's a blueprint, a psychological scaffolding designed to keep you looking outward so you never discover what lives within. Just think, how many industries depend on your insecurity? How many algorithms feed on your self-doubt? How many belief systems thrive because you've been taught that truth lives outside of you? The answer is simple, all of them. But here's the secret they don't want you to remember. The moment you stop chasing what you think you need, the moment you root back into presence, into fullness, the entire structure begins to crumble. Because lack only works on those who forget. It collapses in the presence of someone who knows. And that knowing, that quiet, unshakable remembrance, is your rebellion. You weren't born to live in a cage made of craving. You were born to create, to expand, to bless, to overflow. But you cannot overflow when your inner well is being siphoned by systems that profit from your drought. So pause, breathe, see the architecture for what it is. A facade, a trick of mirrors, a game designed to keep you too busy to awaken. And when you stop playing it, when you no longer accept lack as your identity, you reclaim the most radical thing you can, your enoughness. That's when life starts to bend. That's when the system stops working on you. Because now, you are building a new architecture from the inside out. And it begins not with need, but with remembrance. The Buddha did not promise you happiness. He offered you liberation. And he didn't point to the stars, or to a distant heaven, or even to the gods. He pointed inward, to your mind, to your heart, to the silent grip you hold on the world. All suffering, he said, comes from attachment. Not because desire is wrong, but because grasping warps the soul. To want is human, to love is sacred. But when love becomes a chain, when desire becomes a prison, we forget the essence of freedom. Grasping is not just physical, it's energetic. It's the tightness in the chest when things don't go as planned, the ache when someone pulls away, the panic when the future is uncertain. It is the belief that we must hold everything together, or it will all fall apart. But here's the paradox. The more you grip, the more things slip. Like sand through clenched fists, life resists the one who tries to control it. Because life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be met, experienced, flowed with. The Buddha didn't tell you to stop caring. He told you to stop clinging. There's a difference. Caring arises from presence. Clinging arises from fear. And when fear becomes your foundation, every attachment becomes a burden. You fear losing the person, losing the dream, losing yourself, but you cannot lose what is real. You can only lose what was never truly yours to begin with. Liberation begins not when you give up on love, but when you give up on trying to possess it. When you allow things to be as they are, without force or without demand, you stop suffering because you stop resisting. This is not a cold detachment. It's the warm release of expectations that were never yours to carry. It is the softening of the inner fist, the breath that says, I trust the unfolding. And in that trust, a great peace arises, a peace that cannot be taken, because it is not tied to outcomes. It lives within, it always has. But to find it, you must let go, not of love, not of purpose, but of control. The lotus doesn't bloom because it tries, it blooms because it surrenders to the light. And so must you. Let the grasping end, let the stillness begin, because you are not here to hold everything. You are here to be held by something much greater that has never stopped loving you through every letting go, before the crowds, before the miracles, before the cross. There was the wilderness, not a place of glory, but of silence, of stripping away, of facing the shadows that whisper, you are not enough. This is where the story of Jesus takes a turn most forget. Not in the temples, not in the city, but in the still, dry heat of the desert. For 40 days and 40 nights he fasted, alone. No distractions, no applause, no comfort. And it is there, in the emptiness, that the test came. Not a test of strength, a test of identity. The voice said, if you are the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. The temptation wasn't hunger, it was doubt. If you really are divine, prove it. But Jesus didn't argue. He didn't perform. He didn't react from lack. He met the question not with fear, but with remembrance. He knew who he was, not because the world confirmed it, but because silence did. This is the deeper meaning. The wilderness is not punishment. It is purification. It is the place where all the noise of not enough gets burned away, and all that's left is truth. We each enter this wilderness, maybe not in sand and stone, but in heartbreak, in loss, in the quiet moments where no one's watching, and all the masks begin to fall. And in that stillness, the voice comes, are you really whole without that relationship? Are you really worthy if they don't see you? Are you really enough if nothing else happens? And the old reflex is to perform, to prove, to manifest something, so the void doesn't swallow us. But that's the illusion. The void isn't emptiness, it's invitation to remember what no achievement can give you and what no failure can take away. Wholeness isn't won, it's remembered. You are not here to become worthy. You are here to realize you always were. The desert is sacred because it strips away everything you thought made you valuable and shows you the truth. You never had to earn it. You just had to stop forgetting. This is why the mystics embrace solitude, why Jesus walked into silence, because sometimes only the wilderness can show you who you are, when there's nothing left to chase, and when you remember there, in the stillness, in the hunger, in the doubt, you become unshakable, not because you overcame it all, but because you remembered you were never missing anything. We've been taught to fear the void, to rush past it, to fill it, to escape it with noise, distraction, or urgency. But what if the void isn't emptiness? What if it's everything? The womb before birth, the silence before sound, the pause before transformation. Because true alchemy doesn't happen in the noise, It happens in the nothing, that still, wide, sacred nothing, where all the layers of identity dissolve, and all that's left is space. In Taoism, the void is not a lack, it is the source. Lao Tzu calls it the Great Mother, empty yet inexhaustible. And it's in this emptiness that creation begins. Not the kind you push, but the kind that pulls you inward, into remembering what you are beneath the masks. In the language of mystics, the void is sacred. It's the blackness of the fertile soil before the seed breaks open. It's the moment in the cocoon when the caterpillar has melted into formlessness. It's the inhale before the first breath of new life. But we've been trained to fear that silence, to confuse stillness with stagnation, to see emptiness as failure. So we fill it with plans, with effort, with affirmations, with noise disguised as growth. But no true transformation can happen in a space that's already full. The soul needs room to move. And when you surrender into that room, when you stop labeling the void as a problem, you begin to feel it. The subtle reordering, the quiet regeneration, the ancient rhythm beneath the surface that has never stopped pulsing, because the void is not absence, it is preparation. And if you stay long enough, if you breathe through the discomfort of not knowing, something sacred begins to take shape, not by force, but by presence. You begin to sense the next form rising, not from strategy, but from silence. This is the alchemy, not turning lead into gold, but turning emptiness into power, turning surrender into wisdom. And it's always been this way. In Gnostic teachings, the void is the womb of Sophia, the divine feminine intelligence that births wisdom through mystery. In Kabbalah, the Ein Sof, the infinite, is pure, undivided nothingness from which all creation flows. Even modern physics tells us that the vacuum is not empty, but vibrating with potential. And you are the same. You are not your doing. You are not your goals. You are not your grasping. You are the field. You are the vessel. You are the space where God breathes new life into form. So when the void comes, don't run, don't rush, bow to it. Because that emptiness is not the end. It is the beginning. There's a shift that happens, almost imperceptible at first. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's a soft click inside your field, like a door opening that was never locked, only forgotten. You stop clinging, not out of defeat, but out of peace. And the moment you do, life begins to respond differently, because the soul has its own abundance code, and it's not activated through force. It's not awakened by desperation. It's unlocked through resonance. There is a frequency that says, I already have everything I need, even if the evidence isn't there yet, even if the bank account is low, even if the answers haven't come. It's a frequency of knowing, of no longer begging, of no longer holding your breath, until life shows up with a gift, because you've already exhaled. And in that exhale, you've made space. Clinging comes from the illusion that you are separate, that you must hold on, that if you let go, you will lose everything. But it's the letting go that creates the opening. Your soul does not attract through grasping. It attracts through embodiment. When you relax into sufficiency, even in uncertainty, you tell the universe, I trust the unfolding. That trust is not weakness, it is magnetic. The field begins to shift, the tension softens, the current realigns, and you start to notice little things, the synchronicities, the ease, the way people and opportunities begin to show up, not because you chase them, but because you stop chasing. This is not magic, this is alignment. The soul's abundance code is woven through ancient wisdom. In Hermeticism, they called it correspondence. As within, so without. In Taoism, they called it Wu Wei, non-forcing, effortless flow. In Gnostic texts, it was gnosis, not knowledge, but remembrance. A return to the truth that all you seek already exists within you. And when you remember, you radiate. You become the magnet, not the seeker. You walk into the room, not needing validation, and suddenly, everyone feels your energy. You look at your future, not with fear, but with calm curiosity. You breathe differently. You listen differently. You receive differently. Because the field around you now recognizes that you remember. And it begins to echo that remembrance in everything it sends your way. Not because life changed, but because you did. So when you find yourself clinging, pause. Ask, what am I afraid will disappear if I let go? And then listen, not for the answer, but for the release. Because when you stop clinging, your hands are free again. Your heart opens and the code reactivates. The soul doesn't force abundance, it becomes it. More likes, more dollars, more goals, more followers, more results, more. It is the altar the world kneels to, the chant that echoes through every screen, every classroom, every conversation that begins with, so what do? You are taught to believe that more equals meaning. More success means you matter. More validation means you're real. More control means you're safe. But here's the truth they won't advertise. The more you have, the less you feel. Because in the endless chase for more, you lose the very thing that makes life feel whole. Being. The present moment becomes a stepping stone. Rest becomes guilt. Joy becomes a checkbox. And your soul becomes a shadow, dragged behind the machine of performance. But being is not something you earn. It's something you return to. The mystics warned us. Buddha called it craving, the root of suffering. Jesus turned over the tables of the merchants, challenging a world that turned spirit into currency. Lao Tzu said, "He who knows that enough is enough will always have enough." Because enoughness is not a finish line. It's a frequency, and you can't access it by stacking more. You access it by remembering what you are beneath the stacking. More can only ever offer you volume, but volume isn't the same as depth. Loud isn't the same as clear. Busy isn't the same as fulfilled. You begin to realize, the more you buy, the emptier it feels. The more you chase success, the less you recognize yourself in the mirror. The more you seek approval, the further you drift from your own voice. This is the false god of more. It promises everything, but delivers exhaustion. And it's not just personal, it's systemic. Whole economies run on your discontent. Whole industries thrive when you don't feel enough, because a person who remembers their own worth doesn't need to be sold identity. But here's the miracle. The moment you stop chasing more and start breathing into now, the entire field shifts, because being is magnetic. Presence is wealth. Stillness is power. You don't need to have more to feel more. You need to come back into rhythm with the part of you that never left. And when you do, when you pause, drop beneath the noise and listen, you begin to feel something strange and holy return. Not a new possession, but a lost connection to yourself, to the breath, to the moment. And from there, from being, everything you thought you had to chase starts quietly arriving. We were taught that waiting is wasting, that if we're not moving, we're falling behind. That stillness is laziness. That patience is weakness. But patience, true patience, is not the absence of action. It's the presence of trust, a quiet certainty, a sacred frequency, a signal that says, I do not chase, I align. Because what's meant for you is not running, and what's running was never meant for you. But the world won't tell you that. The world will pressure you to rush, to force, to prove, to panic when things don't unfold on someone else's timeline. But your soul is not on a deadline. It's on a rhythm that honors the seasons, that trusts the unseen, that allows roots to grow before anything blooms. And in that rhythm, patience is power. Think of the seed. It doesn't scream for the sun. It rests in the darkness. It softens. It breaks. And in that surrender, transformation begins. Not because it forced growth, but because it allowed it. This is the power most never see. Because it's invisible. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It waits, not from fear, but from wisdom. The mystics knew this. The Sufis called it sabr, a patience that purifies. The Taoists called it effortless action. Wu Wei. The Buddhists taught it through breath, watching the rise and fall, not trying to control it, just being with it, because the ones who truly trust their becoming don't need to grab. They hold space. They water the soil. They tend to the light. And they know that what is meant cannot miss them. Impatience is rooted in doubt, in fear, in the belief that we must hold the universe together with our bare hands. But patience is rooted in remembrance, that your timeline is not broken, that your path is not behind, that what is delayed is often being prepared for a deeper kind of arrival. The flower doesn't bloom faster when stared at, but it blooms fully when the conditions are right. And you are no different. So breathe. Trust the pause. Honor the in-between. Because what looks like stillness is often the most powerful becoming. Patience is not passive. It's magnetic. It's the field of the one who knows that energy ripens, not on demand but in divine timing. And when it does, when all things align, you will not have to force a single door. They will open, because your presence was enough, and your patience was the proof. You remembered. Gnosis does not begin with learning. It begins with remembering. Not remembering facts, not doctrines, not borrowed beliefs, but remembering something deep, buried, timeless, a knowing that pulses quietly beneath the noise of the world, a feeling that whispers, I've been here before. I've known this all along. In the Gnostic tradition, salvation was not about obedience. It was about awakening, not through worship, but through inner recognition. Because Gnosis means knowledge, but not knowledge from the outside. Knowledge from the soul, from the source, from the divine spark that never left, only slept. The Gnostics believed the world was ruled by illusion, constructs, false hierarchies, systems built to distract you from what you are. They called it the realm of the demiurge, a counterfeit god, fashioning a reality of separation, convincing you that you are powerless, broken, unworthy. But Gnosis burns through the illusion. It doesn't argue with it. It simply sees. It sees that the real temple is within, that the divine was never outside of you, that heaven is not a place you go, but a frequency you remember. This is the truth the mystics carried in secret, not to hide it, but to protect it from the world that would distort it, because a soul who knows itself cannot be controlled, cannot be sold an identity, cannot be bribed by systems that feed on insecurity. Gnosis is dangerous to those in power because it awakens the true power within. It says, you are not a sinner trying to be saved. You are a spark of the infinite, awakening from sleep. And in that awakening, something shifts. You stop trying to become enough. You realize you always were. You stop praying for something to fill you. You realize the cup was never empty, only turned in the wrong direction. Inner fullness is not built. It's uncovered. It's restored through silence, through stillness, through peeling back the layers of programming. You begin to feel it in subtle moments, when your breath deepens, when your mind quiets, when something in your chest softens, and you remember that all is well, even now. The Gnostics didn't fear the world. They saw through it. They didn't hate the body. They honored it as a vessel for the light within, and they didn't seek to escape. They sought to awaken. You don't need another belief. You need to remember, to return. And once you do, the illusion starts to unravel, because Gnosis doesn't demand your faith. It reveals what you never truly forgot. There is a silence that doesn't just hush the world, it rewrites it. Not the silence of boredom, or absence, or numb retreat, but the living silence, the sacred one, the kind that hums beneath sound, that pulses behind breath, that lives between your thoughts. You felt it before, in the stillness before dawn, in the pause between heartbeats, in the moment when the world falls quiet and something else begins to speak. Not a voice, but a knowing, an awareness that doesn't shout, it reveals. This is the silence that unlocks everything. It is not passive, it is powerful, and most have forgotten how to hear it, because we've been trained to fill, to scroll, to move, to react. We've been programmed to equate activity with value, to mistake stimulation for aliveness, to fear the space where nothing seems to be happening. But in truth, that's the only place where everything begins. Silence is where the code rewrites, where the field recalibrates, where old stories dissolve, and new alignments are born. In neuroscience, this stillness activates the default mode network, the brain's inward-facing system, where deep reflection and integration occur. In meditation, it's called the gap, the timeless space between thoughts, the doorway to the self that never changes. In ancient mystery schools, it was the inner temple, a space not built by hands, but by presence, by trust, because silence holds a language the soul never forgot. It doesn't tell you what to do. It shows you what you are. And when you begin to sit with it, to breathe with it, to stop fearing the not knowing, you feel it. Reality begins to shift, not because you manipulated it, but because you aligned with its source. You become receptive, not just mentally, but energetically. And in that openness, life moves differently. Opportunities come without chasing. Clarity arrives without overthinking. Answers rise not from the mind, but from the still pool beneath it. This is why the mystics retreat, why sages sit beneath trees, why prophets go to the desert. Because in the silence, you stop transmitting noise, and you start receiving truth. The silence teaches you how to feel again, how to trust, how to hear your own soul, above the static of a world that's always shouting. And what it unlocks is not just insight, it's transformation. You don't leave that kind of silence the same. You leave recalibrated, more whole, more aware, more you. So sit with it, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it is, because silence is not emptiness. It is the place where life rewrites itself in your favor. You were taught that progress is linear, that life moves in straight lines, step by step, point A to point B, forward only. But the soul does not move in lines. It moves in spirals, in circles that deepen, in patterns that return, not to repeat, but to reveal something you missed the first time around. What you called a setback was really a return. What you thought was going backward was actually unfolding inward. You weren't stuck, you were spiraling toward depth. And here's the paradox most never see. Stillness doesn't stop the spiral. Stillness accelerates it. Because when you stop trying to escape the moment, you drop into it, fully, completely. And that drop inward moves you forward, faster than force ever could. The spiral appears everywhere, in your fingerprints, in seashells, in galaxies, in the unfurling of a fern, the architecture of hurricanes, the golden ratio that underlies all organic life. Even your DNA spirals. This isn't coincidence, it's code, the geometry of becoming, the pattern of all sacred growth. And when you align with it, you begin to understand that returning to the same lesson doesn't mean failure. It means expansion. You're not back at the beginning. You're back at the next layer, wiser, quieter, stronger in ways you can't yet see. But only if you don't rush, only if you allow the spiral to move you, instead of trying to climb the illusion of the straight line. This is where stillness becomes sacred. Because stillness is not the absence of motion, it's motion without resistance. It's the center of the spiral, the eye of the storm, the point from which all expansion originates. You can run for years and move nowhere, or you can become still for 5 minutes and move through an entire lifetime of clarity. This is what the mystics knew, why they sat, why they withdrew, why they let the world pass, while they listened to the deeper rhythm behind the noise. The spiral doesn't ask you to push, it asks you to trust, to surrender to the movement that seems slow, but is secretly exponential. Because the more you align, the less you need to effort. And the more you remember, the less you need to reach. You are not here to climb. You are here to spiral, to expand in layers, to revisit things not to suffer, but to see differently. So let stillness lead. Let the spiral shape you. And know, even now, you are not behind. You are just being drawn deeper into the center of who you truly are. We fear the void because we were taught to fear nothingness. We were told that if something is empty, it's broken. If something is still, it's dead. If something is dark, it must be dangerous. But the void is not absence. It is origin. It is the place before form, before name, before identity. The womb doesn't look like much. It's silent, dark, enclosed. But inside it, stars are born. Spirits begin. Life remembers its source. This is the forgotten mystery of the void. It is not a vacuum to be filled. It is a matrix that holds you, even when you think you're lost. The mystics understood this. In Taoism, the void is the Tao itself, formless, timeless, infinite, the place that is always full, precisely because it is empty of resistance. In Kabbalah, it's the Ein Sof, the endless, the no thing, the sacred backdrop from which all light emerges. In Buddhism, it's Shunyata, not nothingness, but boundless potential, a spaciousness where suffering dissolves and clarity is born. But to access it, You must unlearn the world's fear of stillness, because the mind wants edges, the ego wants labels, but the void offers neither. It offers only being, only trust. And when you enter it, not as a concept, but as a felt experience, you begin to notice something strange. You're not falling, you're floating. You're not alone, you're surrounded. You're not dissolving, you're becoming. Because the womb of the void is not trying to erase you. It's trying to remember you, reform you, repattern you into alignment with what you truly are. Not the person you constructed, but the presence you've always carried. The reason the void feels terrifying is because it dissolves what isn't real. Your titles, your timelines, your false identities. But once that dissolves, once you stop gripping the known, you begin to feel held, not by something external, but by the silence itself. The same silence that existed before you were born. The same silence that will receive you when you leave this body. The same silence that surrounds every breath, every pause, every sacred moment of becoming. You were never separate from it. You were shaped inside it, and it never stopped holding you. So the next time life feels like it's collapsing, the next time you feel lost, weightless, empty, don't rush to escape it. Pause, breathe, listen. You are not in the void. You are in the womb, and something is about to be reborn. We've been taught to fear the void, to run from emptiness, to fill the silence, to reach for something, anything, rather than sit with nothing. But what if nothing isn't empty? What if nothing is sacred space? In the spiritual traditions that whisper beneath the surface of this world, there's an ancient truth, one that never made it into textbooks or modern timelines. Emptiness is not absence, it's potential. It's not a void to be feared, it's an opening to be honored. Because the moment you let go, the moment you release what was never yours to carry, something begins to shift. Not because you chased something better, but because you created space. And in this universe, space is not passive, it is magnetic. You don't manifest by force, you manifest by resonance, by what you make room for. The Taoists knew this. They said the usefulness of a cup is in its emptiness, that it is the space within the walls that gives it purpose. The Buddhists echoed the same. They taught that shunyata, the great emptiness, is not a whole, but a wholeness, a fullness beyond form, where all things arise and dissolve like waves returning to the sea. And quantum physics, even it now confirms that what appears empty is vibrating with potential energy, fields, possibilities, unseen realities waiting for a signal of coherence. That signal is you. Your willingness to release, to stop filling, to trust the space. Because when you cling, you block. When you force, you resist. But when you surrender, you become receptive. And that's when the miracle moves. The breath returns, the insight arrives, the path appears, not through effort, but through emptiness. The heart that knows how to let go is the one that knows how to receive. But we weren't taught this. We were taught to accumulate, to hold, to grasp, to panic at the pause. So we filled ourselves with thoughts, with noise, with distraction, with identities that didn't fit, and stories that didn't serve. But fullness without purpose is suffocation, and what you call nothing might be the space your soul has been begging you to return to, because in the quiet, there's an opening, and in that opening, life flows in. It doesn't rush, it doesn't demand, it arrives gently, exactly when there's room. So breathe. Let go of what no longer echoes your truth. Empty the cup, release the noise, And remember, nothing is not the end. It is the sacred invitation. You've been too full to hear. Meister Eckhart once wrote, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." At first glance, it's poetic, but if you sit with it, truly sit with it, you'll feel the mirror. Because the divine does not live in temples of stone, it lives in reflection, in the still surface of your being. In the moment the mind stops projecting and starts remembering, you are taught to fill the mirror, to add more titles, more achievements, more masks, more labels. You were taught that if you pile enough onto the image, you'll become worthy of reflection. But Eckhart, the German mystic who saw beyond form, knew the truth. The mirror doesn't reveal itself until you stop filling it. And in that emptiness, in that sacred pause where you stop trying to be someone, the reflection shifts. Suddenly, you don't see the ego. You don't see the grasping. You see presence, still, infinite, unshaken. That is what God sees. And when your eye becomes quiet enough, you see it too. You are never separate. You are just busy polishing a mask instead of removing it. The mirror has no agenda. It does not judge. It simply reflects what you bring to it. If you bring anxiety, it echoes it. If you bring noise, it distorts. But if you bring stillness, a surrendering of all false effort, what shines back is not emptiness. It is God. It is the unnameable presence that has always lived behind the veil of your personality. Eckhart called this detachment, not as avoidance, but as release, the sacred letting go of everything you thought you needed to be in order to remember what you already are. He taught that when the soul becomes empty, God has space to pour itself in, and that pouring doesn't come with thunder. It comes quietly, a light behind the ribs, a presence in the chest, a silence that doesn't feel cold, but full of the real you, not the version you perform, but the one that watches the performance and knows it was never needed. This is the divine mirror. It shows not your image, but your source, but only when you stop trying to control the reflection. So go to the mirror, not to fix, not to affirm, not to compare, but to see, to witness, to dissolve, and in that dissolving, to be shown the truth, that the divine was never far away. It was simply waiting for the image to fall, so the light beneath it could be seen again. Meister Eckhart once wrote, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." At first glance, it's poetic, but if you sit with it, truly sit with it, you'll feel the mirror. Because the divine does not live in temples of stone, it lives in reflection, in the still surface of your being. In the moment the mind stops projecting and starts remembering, you are taught to fill the mirror, to add more titles, more achievements, more masks, more labels. You were taught that if you pile enough onto the image, you'll become worthy of reflection. But Eckhart, the German mystic who saw beyond form, knew the truth. The mirror doesn't reveal itself until you stop filling it. And in that emptiness, in that sacred pause where you stop trying to be someone, the reflection shifts. Suddenly, you don't see the ego. You don't see the grasping. You see presence, still, infinite, unshaken. That is what God sees. And when your eye becomes quiet enough, you see it too. You are never separate. You are just busy polishing a mask instead of removing it. The mirror has no agenda. It does not judge. It simply reflects what you bring to it. If you bring anxiety, it echoes it. If you bring noise, it distorts. But if you bring stillness, a surrendering of all false effort, what shines back is not emptiness. It is God. It is the unnameable presence that has always lived behind the veil of your personality. Eckhart called this detachment, not as avoidance, but as release, the sacred letting go of everything you thought you needed to be in order to remember what you already are. He taught that when the soul becomes empty, God has space to pour itself in, and that pouring doesn't come with thunder. It comes quietly, a light behind the ribs, a presence in the chest, a silence that doesn't feel cold, but full of the real you, not the version you perform, but the one that watches the performance and knows it was never needed. This is the divine mirror. It shows not your image, but your source, but only when you stop trying to control the reflection. So go to the mirror, not to fix, not to affirm, not to compare, but to see, to witness, to dissolve. And in that dissolving, to be shown the truth, that the divine was never far away. It was simply waiting for the image to fall, so the light beneath it could be seen again. The world says you must push, hustle, grind, make it happen. But the Tao says something else. It whispers, let it happen through you. This isn't passivity, it's alignment. Wu Wei, action without force, is the ancient Taoist principle that turns our modern thinking on its head. It means effortless action, not because nothing is done, but because what is done flows with the nature of things instead of against it. You felt it before, that moment when everything falls into place, and you didn't have to struggle, when you were so present, so attuned, that life seemed to move with you, not in spite of you. This is Wu Wei. It's the current in the river, the grace in a dancer's movement, the breath that rises without trying, the oak tree growing without effort, reaching the sky only because it surrendered to its own nature. Lao Tzu said, the Tao does nothing, yet nothing is left undone. In other words, when you stop resisting, the flow carries you. But resistance is what we've been taught, to strive, to climb, to wrestle every desire into form. And yet, look what happens. You try to control love. It withers. You force creativity. It dries. You demand abundance. It slips away, because force blocks flow. But when you soften, when you align with the rhythm instead of dominating it, you find a deeper power. It's not about giving up. It's about letting go of the illusion that you were ever steering the whole thing. Action still happens. Decisions still arise, but they come from clarity, not compulsion. The Taoists call it knowing the time. The knowing that emerges from deep presence, not from pressure. Wu Wei doesn't mean sitting back and waiting forever. It means moving when the movement is true, when the energy supports it, when the inner and outer worlds match. It's listening, responding, breathing with life instead of shouting over it. And when you live this way, miracles don't feel magical. They feel natural. Synchronicities increase, effort decreases, peace expands, because you're no longer swimming upstream, trying to force the river to change its course. You're letting it carry you toward the exact shore your soul has always known. This doesn't make you lazy. It makes you wise, because the deepest wisdom doesn't rush. It knows that everything unfolds when the energy is right. So breathe, let go of the tight grip, and ask yourself, where is life already trying to move through me? Then trust it, flow with it, and you'll see What force never gave you, the Tao will. There's a river running through everything. You can't always see it. You can't always explain it, but you can feel it. When you stop fighting, when you stop forcing, you feel the current again. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It simply flows. This is not coincidence. It's not luck. It's not the product of grinding or hustling harder. It's alignment. Flow is not just a nice feeling. It's a higher intelligence, a sacred guidance system, built into the very fabric of the universe, into your nervous system, into your intuition, into your breath. Every ancient tradition has a word for it. The Tao, the Spirit, the Wind of God, Prana, the Holy Ghost, the quantum field. Different names, same river, the part of you that's always known where to go, even when your mind forgot. But here's what no one teaches you. Flow doesn't come from knowing all the steps. It comes from knowing when to stop resisting, from softening the grip, from loosening the armor, from realizing that you're trying is what's blocking the receiving. The world teaches you to plan, to push, to control. But what if that very control is what's jamming the signal? Because flow doesn't respond to control. It responds to coherence, to truth, to openness, to trust. You felt it before, that moment when something just worked. The right words came. The right person showed up. The opportunity clicked into place. And not because you were chasing it, but because you were in rhythm with it. This is not laziness. This is alignment. Flow doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you do the thing that's yours to do, at the right time, in the right energy, with the right spirit. And when you do, doors open. Not because you kicked them down, but because you walked up to the one that was always meant for you. Science is finally catching up. Neuroscientists now talk about the flow state, a measurable frequency, where the brain's noise quiets and performance rises without effort. But the mystics already knew. They knew that surrender is not failure. It's remembering that you are not separate from the current. You are the current. When you stop pretending to be the one swimming upstream. So take a breath. Feel where you're resisting, where you're forcing, where you've been trying to carry a river on your shoulders. Then let it go, and you'll see. Life has been trying to carry you all along. You've been taught to chase the future, to look forward, plan ahead, push toward a better version of tomorrow. But in all that running, did anyone ever show you how to arrive? Because the future you're chasing isn't real. It's a mirage, a projection, a mental sketch drawn from the past. The only thing that ever truly exists is now. This breath, this heartbeat, this flicker of awareness you almost miss while looking for something more. The present moment isn't a stepping stone. It's the doorway, the portal through which all things flow. The mystics knew this. In Sufism, Rumi wrote, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. Be like a tree and let the dead leaves drop." He wasn't talking about passivity. He was pointing to presence, to the wisdom that happens when you stop holding on to a timeline that was never yours to control. Buddha taught the same, that liberation isn't found in the future, but in full awareness of the now. Not because now is exciting, but because now is real. When you're here, truly here, you become magnetic, not by doing more, but by being more. You stop leaking energy into regrets and projections. You stop living inside simulations, and suddenly you remember how to feel again. Taste returns, color returns, intuition returns, and time begins to soften like it's folding around you. Because in the present moment, you're not chasing life, You're co-creating it. This is the place where synchronicities happen, where the soul speaks, where the universe responds, not to what you want, but to who you are. And when you are fully here, you become the tuning fork, through which life plays its next note. But presence isn't just silence, it's participation. It means breathing into what's real, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain. It means feeling the wind without labeling it, hearing the voice beneath the thoughts, noticing the beauty, hidden behind what you expected. Because everything you seek, peace, love, abundance, healing, it can only meet you here. Not in tomorrow, not in someday, only here, only now. This is the portal. The miracle is not waiting in the distance. It's waiting for you to stop running, to stop striving, to stop abandoning this moment in hopes that the next one will be better. You want transformation? Stand still, look around, let the moment open and watch what begins to flow through the portal you've been standing in all along. Enough. It's a word you've been chasing your whole life. You tried to earn it, tried to prove it, tried to dress like it, talk like it, post like it, hustle like it. But no matter how much you achieved, how many milestones you hit, how many eyes you turned, the feeling slipped away because you were never told the truth. Enoughness isn't a destination. It's not something you become. It's something you remember. At your core, beneath the identity, beneath the story, beneath the survival, you are already whole. Not in some distant future, not when you finally get there, but now, right here, as you are. The ancient mystics knew this. The soul was never broken, only buried, covered in layers of conditioning, trauma, comparison, and cultural hypnosis. You weren't born chasing worth. You were taught to. From the moment you entered the world, you were placed in a system that profits from your forgetting. Because a person who knows their worth can't be controlled, can't be sold versions of themselves, can't be manipulated by fear of not being enough. And so the game was simple. Convince you to doubt yourself, then sell you pieces of your own reflection. But the truth never left you. It waited in the quiet, in the stillness, in the ache behind your striving, in the strange peace that visited when you stopped trying. That peace, that deep exhale in your chest, was not weakness. It was recognition. You were remembering that you do not have to fight to be seen, that you do not have to earn your place, that your value is not tied to productivity, popularity, or perfection. It is your birthright. And when you let that truth drop in, really drop in, everything shifts. You stop performing, you stop chasing, you stop contorting yourself into shapes that don't fit your soul. You become honest, present, grounded, and in that groundedness, you become magnetic, because the world doesn't need more people pretending to be more. It needs people who remember they already are. When you stand in your enoughness, you don't need to grasp. You simply receive, not because you begged the universe, but because you became available to the truth of who you are. So breathe. Let the striving fall off your shoulders. Let the masks dissolve. Let the noise grow quiet, and listen. You are not on your way to becoming enough. You've simply been circling back to what was always true. You are enough. You are whole. And you are already home. You've been taught to chase abundance, to script it, to visualize it, to demand it from the universe like a debt owed. You were told to manifest harder, to vibrate higher, to want more, and then want more again. But what if the real abundance was never out there? What if it was never something to attract, but something to uncover? Something that's already alive in you, beneath the noise, beneath the need, beneath the story that said you had to become, before you could receive. Real abundance isn't flashy. It's not just wealth or success or status. It's not measured in how much you own or how many people approve. Real abundance is presence, peace, the unshakable knowing that nothing is missing, that you are whole and always have been, not someday, not when the goals line up, but now, right here. The mystics called it the kingdom within. The Taoists called it the way. The Sufis called it the beloved. Different names, same source. It lives in your breath, in your stillness, in the part of you that remains untouched by circumstance, rejection, or delay. It's why you feel glimpses of fullness in the most unexpected places, the quiet moment, the belly laugh, the walk with no destination, the deep exhale when you finally stop trying. That's not emptiness. That's you, unfiltered, unforced, undistorted by striving. You weren't created to chase wholeness. You were created from wholeness. And when you remember that, the world softens. You stop begging. You start receiving. Not because you earned it, but because you stopped blocking what was already yours. This is the great secret the world never told you, that you don't need to be more, to receive more. You need to remember who you are beneath the need to become, because the real abundance was never what you were taught to pursue. It was the part of you that could sit in silence and feel full, the part of you that could let go of control and still trust the unfolding, the part of you that knew, even in the uncertainty, that you were already enough. That's abundance. And the moment you stop searching for it outside of yourself, the whole universe rearranges to meet you where you are. So don't just ask for more, ask to remember that you were never lacking. Because when you remember that, life will never look the same again. If this awakens something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, breathe it, let it ripple through someone else's remembering. Leave a comment below. Tell us what shifted for you. What part of your soul opened? And if you feel called, subscribe, not just to a channel, but to a deeper path, to a life led by presence, not pressure, by remembrance, not rush. New chapters are coming, and this is just the beginning. So if something inside you whispered yes during this video, honor it. Pass it forward, because the world is changing, and so are we, together. Welcome to the Hidden Voyage. Welcome home. Soul Whisper and Soul Creator. The Hidden Voyage. If this journey moves something in you, don't let it end in silence. Let it echo. Share it with someone still afraid to speak of death, still avoiding the mirror, still pretending time is infinite. Let this video be the hand you extend, the torch you pass, the doorway they didn't know they were seeking. Leave a comment, not just to speak, but to witness. What part of you is beginning to awaken? What have you been avoiding that now asks to be seen? And if your soul feels ready to keep walking, deeper, quieter, truer, then this is your place. Not just a channel, but a temple. Subscribe and join a circle of seekers who no longer run from the end because they've begun to live from it. We release these videos like offerings, each one a prayer, each one a mirror, each one a map to awaken before the end, to remember who you are beneath the name, to walk together toward what cannot die, one breath at a time, one truth at a time, one sacred step on the hidden voyage. Soul Whisper and Soul Creator. The Hidden Voyage.